initiative in 39 out of 49 countries. I want to bring in our guest, Dr. Shweta Chakraborty. She joins us. She's an expert on pandemics and taking out all of the politics. Shweta, I didn't want my president to be going off the cuff last night. There was no preparation, there was no scripting, there was no coherence with the health agencies. He seemed to be shocked outright that, a lot of people die of the flu. That was a revelation to him last night. Again, people were looking for reassurances that the government was taking this seriously and that we were prepared and we had a plan. He seemed to say, nothing to worry about here.
He had an idea in mind, and he was going to lead with it, but then however additional time ahead of the briefing, he gave to the deputy director of the CDC and the head of NIAID that he must have been then convinced leading up to the press conference and therefore could not stick to whatever preparation he had in his mind. And so he had to bring up the flu because that was such an obvious comparison to show where this virus plays in relation to the existing infrastructures and existing preparations that we already have underway and in place. And that's where he got confused, and that's where the sort of rambling began. And this is often what happens to the president when he comes up against scientific facts.
I want to get to one exchange that the president had with CNN's chief medical correspondent, Dr. Gupta, and specifically the pretense of this was the president came out and was shocked, and he believed the rest of the audience in the room and at home was shocked as to how many people die of the flu every year. I'm not a doctor, nor do I pretend to be one on TV, but this was not a revelation to me, but apparently it was to the leader of the free world. Let's listen to the exchange, and then I want to get some context from you.
Flu has a fatality ratio of about 0.1%.
Correct.
This has a fatality ratio somewhere between 2 and 3%. Given that,
we don't know exactly.
Based on the numbers so far.
And the flu is higher than that. The flu is much higher than that.
There's more people who get the flu, but this is spreading, or it's going to spread maybe within communities. That's expectation. Does that worry you? Because that seems to be what worries the American
because we're ready for it.
The mortality rate that Dr. Gupta was trying to get across is 0.1% for the regular flu and 2 to 3% for basic math. That's 20 to 30 times more fatalities on a percentage basis happen if you get coronavirus versus the general flu. But the president was promoting the idea that you had nothing to be concerned about if you contracted this. I'm not trying to make this out to be Ebola, but the president went the complete different direction here, and that, at least to me, was dangerous.
So in terms of the current present risk to Americans, the seasonal flu is still a greater risk. That being said, from the testing and the analysis that we've done so far do say that the coronavirus actually could potentially pose a much greater threat, not just to Americans, but all over the world. If the transmission and the fatality rate stay as is and continue to infect and spread in the way that we initially saw, absolutely. This is something to take very seriously, and that is why in the U.S., because we still are just on the brink of seeing this really become exposed to the public, we're still very much in phase 1, where we're preparing and we're still looking to contain the virus. Other parts of the world that have already now engaged with this virus are moving in towards mitigation, and the idea there is to reduce the spread of harm of this because we know it's coming. Inevitably, it's coming.
We have gotten a break in terms of the window of this, primarily in Asia. Obviously, that's where the exposure was first. We now see in certain parts of Europe they're getting it. Have we used the time, the heads up efficiently? I've noticed certain states, different health commissioners and even governors are trying to but there doesn't seem to be a coherent national plan on this. Has the federal government used the time efficiently? Do we have the right people and both funding in place to really get ahead of this so we can mitigate it when it comes here? Or are we playing catch up?
We're playing catch up. We're being extremely reactive. And that is the worst thing that this administration has done in being proactive and preparing us for what will be an inevitable infectious disease outbreak that will be lethal. What you need is a proactive interagency group in place that does not worry about telling whoever is in power exactly what needs to be done based on the reality of the risk that is being faced and the magnitude of that risk. That is what this administration doing away with is so irresponsible and so scary for the rest of us who work in the space.
Dr. Chakraborty, I appreciate the time here. Hopefully, this is not as bad as some fear.